Hello, and thank you for clicking on this video. Before the video starts, I need you to do two things to help this channel grow. One is subscribe down below, and the second is like this video and share it with anybody that you want to spread MMA news to, whether it's family, friends, anybody. I always appreciate your support. And now let's get to the video. Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Russo, and this is the KO Podcast, episode number 46. In this episode, I will be reviewing a UFC Fight Night Hermansson vs. Pyfer, and of course, this weekend we have a huge UFC card, and that is UFC 298. In the main event, we have the featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski. He looks to defend his belt against Ilia Topuria, who is an undefeated fighter, looking to capture his first UFC world title. Cannot wait to get into these cards. Ring that bell. Alright, getting into this UFC Fight Night card. Unfortunately, the first fight of the night, which was a bantamweight scrap, was unfortunately ruled a no contest in the second round. Both fighters had fouled each other accidentally, and I believe both fighters at the point of the fight being called, they had two fouls each, and Ori just could not recover in time from being accidentally struck in the groin. That was the second time that had happened in this fight. He could not recover in the 5-minute period, so it is ruled a no contest. The next fight, however, did deliver with a finish. It was a featherweight fight, and we had Hyder Mill, I believe that's how you say his name, getting the TKO finish. And we had another finish in the light heavyweight division. We had Bogdan Gustavov getting the TKO in the first round. And moving on to a welterweight fight, we had Trevin Giles taking on Carlos Patrice. I believe that's how you say his name. And Carlos Patrice gets the knockout finish in the second round. Trevin Giles was having a pretty good fight up until then, but Patrice gets the stoppage victory. Alright, now let's get to the main card. First fight up, we had a middleweight bout. We had Rodolfo Vieira getting a submission victory. And in the next fight, we had Michael Johnson picking up the decision. Then we had a middleweight bout. We had Gregory Rodriguez getting the finish in the third round against Brad Tavares. Brad Tavares is always tough to get out of there, so very impressive that Gregory Rodriguez gets the finish in this fight. Up next was a middleweight bout where Ihor Potiery gets the decision victory. And now moving on to the main event of this card. It was a featherweight bout. We had Dan Ige taking on Andre Fili. Andre Fili came into this fight on short notice, and Dan Ige gets another KO for his highlight reel. Just great striking, and of course Dan Ige, one of the more powerful featherweights striking wise in this division, and Dan Ige gets to keep his featherweight ranking. Now moving on to the main event of this card, it was a middleweight bout. We had Jack Hermansson taking on Joe Pyfer. Jack Hermansson, coming into this fight, was ranked number 10 in the UFC middleweight division. Joe Pyfer not ranked, trying to get ranked. But unfortunately for Pyfer, Jack Hermansson gets the 5-round decision victory. It seemed as the fight went on, Jack Hermansson seemed to gain more confidence and really held his ground striking wise. Was a little bit surprised he didn't try to grapple more, but he kept his guard high and for the most part protected himself from any clean shots. And Pyfer, first round, it was really putting it on Hermansson striking wise. But Hermansson held in there strong and stood there and struck right back with Pyfer. And like I said, as the rounds went on, Pyfer seemed to get a little slower and less power on his punches. So Jack Hermansson holds on to that top 10 middleweight rank. Big win for him. Joe Pyfer, I'm sure, will learn many lessons from this loss Now let's move on to the next card. And we arrive at UFC 298's card. This is a pretty stacked card from top to bottom. So let me point out some fighters and fights you should look out for on the early prelims and prelims. Right now, let's go. First fight of the night, we got a very interesting women's flyweight matchup. We got Andrea Lee and Miranda Maverick. Those of you who have been listening do know that Miranda Maverick was on the podcast some time ago, and she is looking to get a W over Andrea Lee, but that should be a good fight right out of the gate. We got Josh Quinlan also fighting, and we have some very good matchups also on this prelim portion of the card. We got Ryan Nakamura, I believe that's how you say his name. He is 8-0 in the bantamweight division. And we also got a heavyweight fight. We got Marcos Rodriguez de Lima taking on Justin Tafa. And of course, to finish off all of the prelims, the main event in the prelim section is a women's strawweight bout. We got Amanda Lemos taking on Mackenzie Dern. So those prelims are pretty stacked in my opinion. Now, let's get to an even more stacked main card. Kicking it off, we have a middleweight bout. We got Anthony Fluffy Hernandez taking on Roman Kopylov. And if you've seen Roman Kopylov his last couple fights, that dude is a killer. Moving on, we have a bantamweight bout. We got Merab Dvalishvili taking on the former double champ Henry Cejudo. This is a huge fight, and it is the second fight on this main card. This means a lot to the bantamweight division in terms of contenders, and if Dvalishvili wins, he definitely is the next guy to fight for the bantamweight title. And if Cejudo wins, he definitely reinserts his name back in the top 5 of this bantamweight division. Moving on, we have a welterweight matchup. We got Jeff Neal taking on Ian Garry. This fight was supposed to happen a couple months ago, but Ian Garry instead fights Neil Magny. Ian Garry would go on to dominate Magny in that fight, but now Neil Garry, it is back on, and I am excited for this fight because I know that Jeff Neal, he is going to push Ian Garry like no one has before. Jeff Neal, I mean, he's fought some of the best contenders in this welterweight class, so he's seen a lot of things that Ian Garry hasn't seen yet in his career. And if you just look at Neal's last fight, he fought Shavkat Ramonov and gave Ramonov his best fight to date. Super competitive fight. Neal obviously got really banged up in that fight, but he took it to Shavkat Ramonov, and not a lot of people can do that. Ended up getting submitted, did miss weight on that fight as well. And then obviously they were supposed to fight August 19th, the show that I went to in Boston, but fortunately didn't pan out. Garry, he's had a lot of drama and controversy swirling around his head, so is his head in the right space? He likes to talk a lot. We'll see if he talks a lot of trash during this build-up or on fight night. But this is going to be an exciting fight. And moving on now to the main event of the evening, we have the former middleweight champion Robert Whittaker taking on Paulo Costa. Robert Whittaker, obviously his last loss is to the now reigning middleweight champion DDP, Dricus du Plessis. Paulo Costa has not fought since his Luke Rockhold fight, which took place a very long time ago, was supposed to fight Chimaev. That fight fell through, but now Costa's here, and obviously we know what Costa is. He is a very powerful and aggressive striker and puncher. Robert Whittaker can really do it all. Obviously now there are going to be some questions about Whittaker's chin and toughness because he did get stopped by DDP, so I'm very excited to see what are their game plans. I know Whittaker is such a tactical fighter, so I'm excited to see what he does to try to slow down Costa and his his just pressure and walking, and Costa wants to walk you down and wants to pressure you, make you feel uncomfortable, and just barrage you with his powerful strikes. Cannot wait for this one. And this all leads us to the main event of UFC 298. We have the reigning featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski. He is taking on an up-and-coming beast in Ilia Topuria. This guy's 27. He's 14-0. He's just ran through everybody that he has fought. This guy can knock you out. This guy can submit you. But Volkanovski looks to stop this Spaniard who just, he just thinks that this is his destiny. And, when guys think like that, that is a dangerous mindset that they are in, because these guys are trained killers, and when they bring destiny into things, it just seems to almost work out for them. But Alexander Volkanovski is one of the best featherweight champions in UFC history. And yes, he did get finished by Islam Makhachev, but that was at lightweight. That was on short notice. And as we have come to find out, Alexander Volkanovski was not mentally or physically prepared for that rematch. And a lot of people are saying that Volkanovski, he's 35 or 34 right now, he's going to decline. And Topuria, like I said, is a guy that thinks this is his destiny to become champion. We've seen that before with a lot of other fighters, and they share that same mindset. And let me tell you, I have thought that Topuria was going to be a champion, for a little while now. I mean, we look back into his fight history. October 11th in Abu Dhabi, 2020, gets a decision win. Then just from there, 3 straight KOs of his opponent. And then he gets a triangle. He gets an arm triangle choke on Bryce Mitchell after beating him up on the feet. He submits a submission specialist, which was uber impressive. And I want to look at this fight that was actually just before that Bryce Mitchell one, and it was a lightweight bout, and it was against Jai Herbert. And he finished the fight. He KO'd Herbert, but he got head kicked, and he got head kicked really bad in that fight. Had to recover. Had to pull his will out of himself, and he finished that fight by knocking Jai Herbert out cold. But that shows that Ilia Topuria, he's got heart, he has toughness. Volkanovski, we know that he has toughness after breaking out of Brian Ortega's submission. I mean, everybody thought that he was going to tap or lose consciousness, but Volkanovski is a different beast. This fight is really tough to decide on a winner, but, I'm going to have to go with the guy that I've thought that could be champion all along. I think Ilia Topuria, he's going to get a finish in this fight, I believe. I'm not sure if it's a knockout or submission yet, but I'm going to take Ilia Topuria, and that is your new UFC featherweight champion. And that is going to do it for this episode of the KO Podcast. To stay up to date with the podcast, I have a link tree in all of my social media bios. I even think the link tree is on YouTube. It's in my YouTube bio, so definitely go check out that link tree. It has every single link to any social media or media platform that this channel is on. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen. Stay safe, stay blessed. Bye-bye.